Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's morning study call. We're going to continue with our study of Genevieve Behrend's book, Your Invisible Power. We finished off chapter 1 yesterday, and so we're going to be jumping into chapter 2. And chapter 1 was all about order of visualization was the name of the chapter. And so we talked a little bit about some of those, and she brought out a lot of other principles that we discussed there as well. And then chapter 2 is called How to Attract to Yourself the Things You Desire. So let's jump right in here. The power within you, which enables you to form a thought picture, is the starting point of all there is. In its original state, it is the undifferentiated, formless substance of life. Your thought picture forms the mold, so to speak, into which this formless substance takes shape. Visualizing or mentally seeing things and conditions as you wish them to be is the condensing, the specializing power in you that might be illustrated by the lens of a magic lantern. The magic lantern is one of the best symbols of this imaging faculty. It illustrates the working of the creative spirit on the plane of the initiative and selection, or in its concentrated specializing form, in a remarkably clear manner. So just wanted to, she's going to go more into this magic lantern kind of idea that she's talking about more in the next chapter. So I don't want to talk about that. But I want to talk about just what she was saying before, that there is this formless substance that we've talked about before that is behind everything. And as you hold the mental picture in your mind, that becomes the mold through which this spirit, this power comes through, that it starts to take shape in and around your life. Now, what's very interesting, again, this book was written around the turn of the century, of the 19th century. I guess, sorry, the 20th century. And so they didn't have a lot of the modern advances in science that we have. What we are now understanding with quantum physics and some of the other things that they're studying is we're starting to learn more about consciousness and the role that consciousness plays in how we experience, how we see, how we interact with the world around us. Some quantum physicists speculate that everything around us that we experience is just energy, that it takes different forms or shapes depending on what it is that we hold in our mind. And it's the kind of confluence or interactions between these different states of energy that actually create your consciousness, and then your consciousness interacting with the larger field of energy around you, you create the actual world around you that you experience. Now, one of the things that you might question, or you might say, well, if I am creating this world around me because of, my consciousness is what's creating, why don't I have a greater or broader ability to create the world? Why don't I hold a picture of an elephant, so to speak, in my mind, and that elephant takes shape around me? I think that there are a couple of different things, and I just want to touch on maybe two ideas there of why I don't think that that happens. Now, I think that if you were to have a powerful enough mind, and that you were be able to understand the laws that govern these energy fields, you could probably approximate something like that. But until we learn how to operate with the field that way, I think that, well, the first thing that I think is happening is that you're not the only consciousness. You have, what is it, 9 billion people on this earth right now, and all of their consciousnesses are creating the world around them as well. And so for you to be able to create something in your life, it has to coincide and work with all the other consciousnesses that are creating the world around them as well. So if you were to create this elephant just, in your front yard or whatever, that would negate, so to speak, the creation that the other consciousnesses are creating. And that's why oftentimes when we hold an image in our mind, that we have to attract by natural processes the thing that we want into our life, because the other minds, the other consciousnesses around us are expecting things to happen in a certain way. And if it conflicts with that, then they're going to counteract your ability to be able to manifest or create whatever it is that you're wanting to just create right off the bat in front of you. And so that's what I talking about, is that these consciousnesses are creating along patterns of creation, or what it would expect to create. Now, if you had, like I said, if you had a mind powerful enough that you could overcome, so to speak, those other consciousnesses and force upon them, so to speak, the creation that you're trying to create, then you could create in, the natural world, whatever it is that you are wanting, without it needing to follow the natural lines of creation, so to speak. Or if you are aware of laws, or a law that would allow you to do that, then you could do that. And at the same time as your mind is connected to this energy source, all the other minds are connected to this energy source as well. And so we're all connected to each other through this source. And so we're all kind of in harmony, so to speak, with each other. They've done different studies, and they've done different experiments of like meditation and prayer at different points in the world, to try to affect the entire world. And they've gotten thousands and thousands of people together to try to do these things, and there have been what appears to be some form of success. That when you gather enough minds together that are creative centers, and you're all trying to create the same thing, that you can convince all the other minds. So it's not like one mind trying to convince all the others. It's many minds convincing themselves of what's there, and then things start to appear, things without needing to follow the natural process of things. And so if you can get many minds together that are united in the same purpose, in the same vision, then it seems, I'm not saying that this is possible, but it seems to be possible that these things can create something more than just what one mind can create on its own. Because, as I said, all these other minds, because they're creating the world around them, they're expecting the world to be a certain way. So you can't counteract that unless you were to overcome or influence those other minds in such a way that your vision would overpower what they expect to see, so to speak. And then the other thing that I think that is happening here, of why you don't create that thing out in your world, is, one, I don't think that you actually believe that you could. Part of manifesting, part of creating something out in the world around you, is your own personal belief. So if you are holding in your mind the picture of something that you're wanting to create in the world, and we'll use that same example of an elephant, there's probably a certain part of you on the inside that has doubt, that doesn't believe that this is going to actually be created in the world around you. And so you're counteracting yourself and what you actually believe is out there. So for you to create something in your life, in your world, you have to have complete faith that that is possible. And that's why in yesterday's daily study talked about the idea of starting small. When you're trying to create something in your life, when you're trying to manifest something, it's to build this belief, build this faith within you, because this faith has to be unshakable for you to create whatever it is that you want in your life. Now, if you have created $1 million in your life before, it's not going to be hard for you to create it again because you have the belief that you can do it because you've done it before. But if you've never done it before, then you're going to have to build that belief, and you have to start from where you're at to expound on and go beyond that. All right, let's go on with her what is it, metaphor of the magic lantern. This picture slide illustrates your own mental picture, invisible in the lantern of your mind until you turn on the light of your will. That is to say, you light up your desire with absolute faith that the creative spirit of life in you is doing the work. By the steady flow of light of the will on the spirit, your desired picture is projected upon the screen of the physical world, an exact reproduction of the pictured slide in your mind. So, we don't use these anymore because, we have things like projectors and stuff like that, which are kind of similar. But what she's talking about here is if you have a lantern, and then on the outer area of the lantern, it has a pattern or something that's surrounding the light so that when you turn it on, you can see that pattern. Now they still have these kinds of things. They're more kind of like kids lights or novelty items that has a little cover to the lamp, and when you turn it on, you might see stars or like a comet or a moon or something being shined around the room, or maybe on the ceiling of the room from the lamp or the lantern. And that's what she's talking about. And they used to have these things where you could put something over a lamp, and then it would shine, and the picture would be seen on whatever it is that you were projecting on. And then, as time went by, we developed more technology, and we don't use these things anymore. We use things like projectors that are able to project out onto the screen, or maybe we don't even use a projector anymore. It's just a TV screen that, has the picture on it itself. But that's what she's saying, is that the image that you're holding in your mind becomes like the little cover on the lantern. And then this spirit, this power that flows through everything is like the light. So it illuminates the picture that you're holding in your mind, and then it projects that picture out into the world. And that's what you experience as the world around you. So if the things that you're holding in your mind are of lack, of limitation, of that you're a victim of the world, then that image is being projected by this spirit, this power, this substance that flows behind everything out onto the world around you. And so if that's what you're experiencing, you don't need the world to change. You don't need other people to change. You don't need circumstances to change. What you need to change is what you are being on the inside, and the picture that you're holding in your mind. And then that will be projected on the world around you. And this is a process. It's not something that is done overnight. You have to reprogram that subconscious mind through repetition, so that then you start seeing that in the world around you. And if you've never done something like this before, it can be difficult, because these things are muscles. They operate, again, as I said, on this idea of faith. And she talked about this absolute faith that this thing would be created. So you have to develop these things. And so that can take some time. And many people that start out on this journey and then they don't see immediate results, because we kind of live in a society where we expect things to be immediate. We expect things to happen, or at least that we can see the beginnings of things happening, in an instant. And if we don't see the results happening right away, we get discouraged, or we don't think that anything is going on. But these things take a lot of background work. They take a lot of us developing our own self, that you don't often see the results in the outer world immediately. It takes some time. It can sometimes take months or years to develop the abilities to work with these things. And again, that's why it's often encouraged for people that are starting out on these journeys to start small, so that doubt, that worry, that fear isn't getting in the way, that you have that faith And then you start to develop the capabilities of visualization and the willpower to hold that vision of what it is that you want in your mind, regardless of what your outer environment might be showing you, so that then that becomes the world that you see out around you. All right, let's continue on here. Visualizing without a will sufficient steady to inhibit every thought and feeling contrary to your picture would be as useless as a magic lantern without the light. On the other hand, if your will is sufficiently developed to hold your picture in thought and feeling without any ifs, simply realizing that your thought is the great attracting power, then your mental picture is as certain to be projected upon the screen of your physical world as any pictured slide put into the best magic lantern ever made. And I kind of talked about this idea just a moment ago, and she's bringing it out here, that you have to develop your will so that there's no ifs, so that you have complete faith that it's going to, that what you see in your mind is going to manifest itself in the world around you. And so she says, visualizing or holding some picture in your mind, but not believing that it's going to actually come into fruition in the world around you would be as useless as having this lantern, but not turning on the light. And so when I teach my students this process of visualization, I teach them that there are two components that you need to mold together as the starting point of this whole process. One is you have to have a clear vision of what it is that you want. And what I mean by a clear vision is that one, it's not a vague idea. So, it's like, oh, I want a ball, but there are many types of balls. There's footballs, there's baseballs, there's soccer balls, there's many different forms. And so if you just say a ball, that can be kind of vague. And your mind might actually attract you a ball, but it might not be the ball that you want. Or, if you're wanting a new job because the job that you have isn't meeting your needs, or maybe you don't like your boss or your coworkers or whatever it might be, your mind will probably bring you a new job, but it might not be the job that you want. And so you need to be specific of what it is exactly that you want. So that's part of that clear picture. The other part, when I mean by a clear picture, is that you're not going back and forth. You're not wishy-washy in your mind, that you've chosen something specific. It's like, let's say that you want a new vehicle, and maybe there's two different kinds of vehicles that you might want, and your mind is constantly going back and forth between the two. Well, when you're holding in your mind the picture of one vehicle, you might be starting those creative processes so that that can come into your life. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe I want the other one. And then you're going back to the other one. You stop the creative process for the one, and then you've started the creative process for the other. And then, if you're constantly flipping back and forth between the two, that process never actually starts to gain momentum and be able to manifest itself in your world, because you're not actually creating and holding the vision of what it is that you want in your mind. If you use example of her magic lamp, if you were to constantly put different lamps shades on top of that over and over, you wouldn't see the picture of what it is that you're wanting in the outer world. And so that's the first thing, is a clear vision of what it is that you want. And the second thing is an uplifted emotion. And there are a couple of different components that can go into this uplifted emotion. One of them is this faith that you have to believe that it is possible. And so one of the ways that you can create this form of belief is just to ask yourself the question, if I had this thing right now in my life, the thing that I'm trying to create, the vision that I'm trying to hold in my mind, if I had that thing right now in my hands, or if I was experiencing it in the world around me, how would I feel? What would my experience be right now? And then you hold on to that feeling as if you already had that thing. And one way that you can do that is to actually express gratitude. So you haven't even received the thing yet, but you are grateful that you have received it. And then if you can hold in your mind that clear vision and that uplifted emotion with the gratitude that that thing is already yours, then that creates a magic that starts to attract to you the opportunities for you to then get whatever it is that you want. And so what she's saying here, I'll just read it really quickly. On the other hand, if your will is sufficiently developed to hold your picture in thought and feeling without any what ifs, so without any doubt, having complete faith, simply realizing that your thought is a great attracting power, then your mental picture is as certain to be projected upon the screen of your physical world as any pictured slide put into the best magic lantern ever made. So clear vision, an uplifted emotion, and then hold that with faith that it's going to show up in your world, and then that thing will manifest itself. Try projecting the picture in a magic lantern without a light that is constantly shifting from one side to the other, and you will have the effect of an uncertain will. It is as necessary that you should always stand back of your picture with a strong, steady will as it is to have a strong, steady light back of a picture slide. So she, sorry, sometimes I get talking about these things and I skip ahead before the author trying to actually bring out these ideas, but she was talking about, she's bringing out this idea that you don't want to flip back and forth. That she uses the idea of you're turning the light on and off, that you're changing that mental picture is the light going on and off, then you're not going to see the picture in the magic lantern out in the world around you. The joyous assurance with which you make your picture is a very powerful magnet of faith, and nothing can obliterate it. You are happier than you ever were because you have learned to know where your source of supply is, and you rely upon its never-failing response to your given direction. Now, in some religions, they talk about this idea that they say statements like, when you know the truth shall set you free. When you have faith in God, then you lose all doubt and fear. Those kinds of ideas are expressed. And this is what I think that those scriptures actually mean, that when you learn this process, when you learn how to create this way, then you're not worried about things that are going on or going wrong in your life, because you know how to change them. You know how to work through them. You know how to create what it is that you actually want out of life. And so you're not moving through life with the fear of what if, or what if this doesn't happen? What if I don't get the raise? What if I don't get the job? Say you're going to school. What if, no one wants to hire me? Whatever it is that you might be experiencing, you start to lose those fears, and you start to have that faith that is actually necessary, so that then you create the world around you. I've heard it explained sometimes, it's kind of like a teeter-totter, that in the beginning you don't have that faith, you don't have that belief that this is even possible, but you start to, let's say you put a bucket on each end of the teeter-totter, and the one that's towards the ground is filled with your doubt and fear, and you start to take stones from one and put it into the other, and slowly, that teeter-totter begins to tip until one day, poof, it tips. And then you start to see the results in your life, and the results that start to happen in your life start to give you greater faith. And with that greater faith, you're able to do more, and it becomes this snowballing process to where you start to be able to create more and more and more in your life. All right, we're about out of time here. Let's see, we're 2 pages in. This is about 5 pages, so we're almost halfway through this chapter. But we'll end it here. Again, this is, we're going through this the study of this book on a slow process. We don't want to read through this just to get to the end, because oftentimes when you do that, you don't get anything out of it. Now, when I do my own study of books, is that oftentimes I will read it through from beginning to end, somewhat quickly, that I don't take a lot of time to really delve in and study some of it so that I can gain a background of what the author is talking about, so I can get a foundation from which to understand what it is that they're talking about. And if I felt that the book was of sufficient value, I'll go back and start to do this slow process where I go through it. I'll take it paragraph by paragraph, sometimes even sentence by sentence, and try to see, okay, what is the author saying, or how does that fit into what I already understand? Especially if it's something that conflicts with something that I believe or that's been my personal experience, try to see, um, how can this fit in? Because sometimes what happens with knowledge, with things that we're trying to understand in our life, is that there will be contradictory principles, there'll be contradictory ideas, but then there's a third idea that is above those two that actually brings those two together, and they actually complement each other very well. And so just because something comes along that, may not fit into your paradigm, may not fit into what it is that you believe, don't just toss it out right away, but analyze it, study it, try to see how there might be truth there. And I promise you, you will find value. I know, growing up in kind of a religious background, that I was very closed off, but when I started to open my mind and try and actually analyze and study and look at the principles that I was taught as I was growing up, I found that these things actually have a lot of power and they have a lot of substance to them. But because we never question them, when we just go through the motions, then we lose the power of those principles sometimes. So again, when I study things, I'll read through it, but then when I go back, I'll start studying. I've read through this book, Your Invisible Power, and thought it was of sufficient value that I wanted to do it on this study call and take it slowly, little by little, chunk by chunk, so that this book, although it's, let's see, how many pages is it in total? It's just over 100 pages in total, which isn't, a very large book. You could read a book like that in a couple of hours. But so far, I think this is the fourth study call that we've done, maybe even the fifth study call that we've done. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. And we are on page 20, so we're about a fifth of the way through. So these things, you can glean a lot of information if you just slow down, go through these things slowly as you study. All right, with that, we'll end this morning study call, and hopefully we'll see you all again tomorrow. So bye for now.